Hello and welcome or welcome back to my Bookish week where we chat about everything that I read, everything that I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading for about the current week. So let's dive right into the books. The first one is for the BookTube Prize, so I can't really talk about my thoughts on this book until I wrap it up in early August when the round is ended. However, this, from a synopsis level, is a nonfiction book about the topic of Black soldiers in World War II, and specifically individual experiences from the start to finish of the war. We also get the politics and policy aspects and those impacts on these soldiers and their lives. So very, very interesting topic. The next one was a short one. This is the second in the Decluttering Mysteries, An Untidy Death by Simon Brett. So I didn't know this when I started the first book, but Simon Brett is a TV writer, I believe, and that comes across in these stories. It's very dynamic and cinematic, so you can visualize this playing out. And we've seen that as a trend in a number of mysteries recently, with Richard Osman, I think, and I'm blanking on the other TV writer guy's name. But regardless, this was entertaining enough that I continued on and I finished it, but I had pretty big problems with this one, or it didn't live up to how much I enjoyed the first, and I did actually have problems with the first one as well. The first one I would have called a cozy mystery, and the second one sort of lost all of those elements. So why I would have called it a cozy a bit is that it focused on our main character, Ellen, and she is a declutterer, obviously, not a cleaner, and she would go around to all her different clients. It kind of had a day-to-day or a week-to-week sort of cycle, and that was all in addition to the murder mystery that she was doing for the most part. And so that felt very calming and very routine, and so that brought the cozy vibes. You really could associate and connect with her feelings for these people and how much her doing her job was caring about people. In this one, we really don't get very much decluttering. In fact, she kind of visits a couple clients, but it's a very minimal part of this book. The murder mystery is the prominent part to this, and this is only 180 pages, so it's not expanded or expounded on very much at all. Ellen is getting involved in a woman's life who is famous, much like her own mother, who is also a kind of eccentric, famous person. And in this case, it's because a daughter who she feels a certain amount of empathy for when she reaches out has said, yeah, my mom really has a hoarding problem and she needs some help. So Ellen goes to check things out, meets with this famous mother, and has a drink with her, and then shortly after, this woman dies in a fire. Is it an accident? Is it a murder? We don't really know until obviously the very end. So that is part of the mystery, is there are all these potentials that could play out to murder, but there are just as many that it could totally be valid. If she was a hoarder, her house is full of junk, and you know, it's very possible this could have been an accident. So kind of issue number one with this is to do with the mystery aspect, that she has met this woman one time as a potential employee, and yet people keep coming to her with information. Not like she's not chasing down this mystery at all. It's just people keep coming to her and contacting her. One of the people that contacts her, I could not figure out why he contacted her, or like what they had to talk about that had anything to do with him contacting her. Like they have a discussion. She doesn't really ask him questions. He seems to want to share information with her. That's it. And it's very odd. It doesn't make any sense why he, as this complete stranger, would know to contact her or would want to share this information with her. So in this story, no one behaved like a human being. that was my big flaw. It was very odd how she came to the information she did, and I didn't believe it. But it was still entertaining. The second thing that was very unbelievable is that one of the clients or potential clients that she has, not related to the mystery, sort of starts coming on to her romantically. And she slaps the guy. But it's so unbelievable. You can tell that this is written by a guy, because there's no assault that happens. He's not even particularly aggressive about it at all. It's unwanted, definitely, but he is just sort of like verbally saying, well, you can see we're clearly meant to be together, sort of deal. If women went around hitting people for that, like, guys would be getting hit all of the time. Like, it was not believable at all. The third thing that really got to me is how overt the element of alcohol is to this, and how inconsistent Ellen is about it, really. That it was prominent in the first book about these certain things that she sort of does. She doesn't want to drink alcohol because it will potentially risk her license, right? Which is rational, but like, she thinks that multiple times in here, and she had already thought that in the first book as well. We are told repeatedly how her mother drinks a lot all of the time, and that clearly bothers her. It is brought up again very heavily here. And with everyone that she encounters, alcohol seems to be an element. And she is so inconsistent, as I said, about it, because she will, in the same day, be really trying to avoid it and saying, no, I can't, and I'm internalizing that she's only going to drink at home. And then she'll be out with someone in the evening and she'll drink, even though she clearly was driving, because she like went over to this person's house and has to get home. So it didn't make any consistent sense for that aspect. So did not work at all. In terms of the mixed or positive aspects to this, I would say that this definitely leaned less cozy, because the prominent aspect of her personal life that we're seeing is her dealing with a mental health crisis with someone in her family. And I think that was well handled, but it was very heavy for such a short book, especially when the first one was a little lighter. The first one did have that as an aspect. It had suicide and depression, and here we're dealing with a major depressive episode that has a connection back to that. So I didn't hate it, but it meant it didn't have the same vibe at all as the first book. So I think well done in terms of depicting it realistically and true to life. In terms of what I liked, as I said, it was entertaining, and the mystery really did have me guessing. It genuinely was compelling to read, even though I didn't believe how anyone was acting. I think it would make a good show, and so that's why I can see why the author is a TV writer. But like, I didn't know who was a potential killer. There were so many different options, and I didn't know if there was a killer or if it was an accident, right up until the very end, like literally the final pages. And I think that keeping you guessing and keeping you compulsively reading is sort of the point of having a mystery like this. So I think well done in that aspect. The side characters for me really shined through. That was true of the first book as well. And I just sort of wish we had seen more of those people that are regular elements in her life that are not her family, like the people she really spends a lot of time with, and she has a complex relationship with her family. So she does kind of turn to these people that she's sort of helping more often. And I would have loved to see more of that. So it was very okay with a lot of mixed feelings. Then I read a graphic novel, and that was The Last Count of Monte Cristo by Ayize, Jama-Everett, and illustrated by Tristan Roach. This was a random grab from the new releases shelf at the library, so I didn't know anything going in. I hadn't heard anybody talk about it, but that cover is pretty stunning and colorful. And this is a Count of Monte Cristo retelling, obviously, in graphic form, in an Afrofuturist setting. One of the coolest takeaways from this is actually the publisher, who I had not heard of before, but they are the Abrams Comic Arts Megascope. The Megascope is a fictional device imagined by W.E.B. Du Bois, I can't remember, I want to say Du Bois, but I think it's Du Bois, that can peer through time and space into other realities. This magical invention represents the idea that so much of our collective past has not seen the light of day, and that there is so much history that we have yet to discover. So that's a cool inspiration for the publisher, and a publisher that I will be looking into more, definitely. This was not totally successful for me. It was okay. I think if you can set aside the source material and take this as inspired by rather than like a proper retelling, you'll probably have a good time with it. It hits the main story beats, but it feels very rushed. I think there was maybe 20% where he is actually the Count, and everything prior is sort of him being, so the Count story is him being betrayed, locked up in prison for years, spending 10 years establishing himself after he escapes, and then becoming a Count and seeking revenge for the betrayal that happened initially. So those are main story beats. And it hits all the kind of bullet points of the story along the way, but it doesn't really develop those out. So I think for world building, this was very cool. There is obviously like a major sort of ship and water trade system, and there's a ship on the back actually as well. So that was all very cool and connects Asia and Africa very much through the story, and part of the catalyst for the betrayal is surrounding things happening in the Dalit Wars in India, which is not really explained or explored. Dalit is obviously a low caste in India, and clearly there's some conflict going on there. But other than us getting a very diverse cast that is both African and throughout Asia, we don't really see anything else in the world building about that. So there's cool background to make it like seem very neat in how things are portrayed and stylized, but there's not much meat there. I would say the story, as I said, felt rushed, and especially at the end, like it feels like everybody knows who he is or is finding out who he is instantaneously, and so you lose the sense of drama and the slow build that makes the Count of Monte Cristo story really great. So this was okay. I would also point out, this didn't really bother me, but I think it will bother some people. There is an aspect that all the women are wearing very shape-fitting and kind of revealing clothes at times. And it comes across ridiculous because of the fact that some of them even are wearing headscarves, like full headscarves, and not just the women and men are wearing them both because of the conditions that they're in, where it's either water or desert. And so you have a headscarf, full bodysuit, but there's a cleavage cut out. It's like very, very silly, but it didn't bother me really. I read a lot of comics and that's pretty par for the course, but I think that will get under the skin of some readers. I also really liked that this was such a colorful palette in terms of the art styling, really bright, high impact, so not just the cover here, but everything throughout. And I think the dynamic between having all of those cultures shown and represented in clothing, in style, and how they travel was done really, really well. So I think the art shone a little more than the storytelling for me, but this is a publisher I want to check out more for, and I was excited to read this, so I think it was over-ambitious maybe, but a good effort. And that is it for what I finished this week. What I started, or not started, I continued on with the Facemaker I think I mentioned. So Book 2 Prize is like full speed ahead, so Facemaker on audio, and I'm all in on Eating to Extinction by Dan Saladino as my last Book 2 Prize in print. So once we finish that, I'm not going to be picking up anything I think this week, as I've got 2 weeks to finish up my Book 2 Prize reading, so I need to just work on those 2 books until they're done. So it won't be very interesting next week, most likely. So I think that is it for all the reading stuff. In terms of watching stuff, I haven't finished anything. I've been watching ongoing shows, so nothing exciting there. In terms of life, I got a foster cat. Finally, I've been on the list for a while, and I've only been willing to take short-term fosters for right now, and every time that's usually kittens. So all the kittens get snapped up immediately as soon as they get available. So I finally got one. It's an adult, and just for a week for a space surgery recovery. So she's been so sweet. Kind of mixed because she is really particular about not allowing people to touch her. So she will allow it when she wants it. It has to be on her terms. So I would say that's been interesting because I haven't had a foster like that before. Like, I have not picked her up or anything, and that's a little touch and go with fosters that are recovering from surgery anyway. It's been interesting getting to know her, definitely, because of her sort of behavioral quirks, and that's always the case with fosters. But I was very glad to get back into fostering because it has gone a couple months since I lost Cinnamon, and my previous foster before that, a few months. So I've been ready to kind of get back on the wagon and enjoy having cats come in and get to see them. My cats have been totally cool. Rue and Gumbo have been spending a little extra time just chilling in the closet, so because they're not so sure about it, but they haven't been overtly upset by it. And I was a little worried it had gone long enough that they hadn't had a weirdo cat coming in the house that they would be freaked out. They've been fine. So I think that's my week for the most part. Nothing else exciting going on. Storms in my area, definitely. I haven't lost power, but a lot of my area has, so I've been very, very lucky. And I'm hoping that we don't get much flooding the coming few days, because so far it's been like a day of pouring rain and then it moves on, but we're meant to get, I think, 4 days straight of pouring rain. So we will see if I'm underwater, or not underwater myself, but trapped in my neighborhood. That very much happens when it pours down and floods. So I think that is all for my week. I don't have any recommendations to give, actually. I have again been horribly behind and catching up on videos while I can. So I will just leave it at that for you all today. Thank you so very much for watching. Hello! Oh, you gonna say hi?